Today is day 359 of the October 7 war, a war that Hamas had started. Hezbollah joined the next day, and now it involves the Islamic Republic of Iran and its proxies on a total of 7 fronts around Israel. The Islamic Republic of Iran has established a ring of fire around Israel. You've certainly heard the news. Hezbollah's head, Hassan Nasrallah, is dead. It's not only the people of Israel who are relieved. Actually, many throughout the Arab world are celebrating. After news of Israel's Friday strike on Hezbollah's leader spread, parties erupted in the streets of cities in Syria. Music was played, sweets were handed out, faces were smiling. Why are Arabs happy about an Israeli victory? People who don't know anything about the Middle East assume that Arabs and Israelis are enemies. But that's not true. Millions of Sunni Muslims in Syria, for example, hate Nasrallah. They hate Hezbollah, and they hate the Iranian overlords directing them. Over 1 million were slaughtered by them in recent years, while Hezbollah helped Syria's bloody dictator Assad massacre his own people. Sunni Muslims remember Hezbollah's assassination of Lebanon's Prime Minister, Rafiq al-Hariri, in 2005. They also remember Hezbollah's slaughter of Palestinians in Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria in 2015. And they remember Hezbollah's starvation of babies in Madaya, Syria in 2016. Ignore what Western commentators are telling you. Listen to what the Arabs themselves have to say. Many in the Arab and Muslim world know that Hezbollah is a force for destruction. They know that Hezbollah is an Iranian boot on their neck. In fact, they felt on their own skins the cruelty of the rapes, the massacres, the beheadings, and the torture in Syria carried out by Hezbollah. Hezbollah claims that its reason for existing is to be the defender of Lebanon. But many see through that claim. Israel, on its part, has no interest in occupying Lebanon at all. In fact, it waited for 11 whole months before retaliating to massive barrages of rockets into its sovereign territory, something which no other country in the world would ever do. Let's remember, the week before Hamas and Hezbollah launched their wars on Israel on October 7th and 8th, global headlines were announcing that peace was coming to the Middle East. Actually, there was optimism in the air. There was talk of peace between Israel and the most important Arab state, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Since then, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been trying to destroy Israel from 7 fronts, using the Arab proxies firing from the rubble of Iranian-dominated Arab states like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. In the last weeks, with Hezbollah's senior leadership eliminated and Hamas being broken in Gaza, there is yet a chance to again pave the way to peace, but not before Israel makes absolutely sure that the Hezbollah, or what remains of it, is removed from the Lebanese-Israeli border and is disarmed. Or in other words, make sure that the 2 UN resolutions pertaining to the issue from 18 whole years ago are actually implemented. President Biden released a statement after Nasrallah's death, and he said that Israel's strike on Nasrallah was a measure of justice for his many victims, including thousands of Americans, Israelis, and Lebanese civilians. And he's absolutely right. The war is not yet over. Hezbollah continues to attack Israelis right now. Hamas continues to hold hostages in its terror dungeons in Gaza. The Iranian regime continues to threaten Israelis with yet more attacks. With Hezbollah's leadership in disarray, now is the time to press the advantage. Now's the time to leverage Israel's tactical victories over Hezbollah in order to roll back the Islamic Republic of Iran's regional hegemony. All countries of the world must stand behind Israel and its Arab partners in the region as they beat back the Iranian regime and forge a new future. Now let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
There's been reports just before you started going live on social media that there were attacks from Hezbollah rockets. There were reports just before you started your live in Tiberias, Nazareth, rocket sirens going off from Hezbollah. How far can Hezbollah's rockets reach into Israel, and how is the Israeli home front preparing for such threats?
So it's well known that the Hezbollah, before the IDF attacked its storages and its arsenals and its headquarters, had hundreds of thousands of rockets, many of them very specific and very, very long range. And this is something that still remains a danger and a threat, not only to Israel, but as we see, some of these rockets land up in Arab towns in Israel, but also in the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. So it's truly a threat to the entire region. We did cut back significantly on the supply, but there's still a lot of work to do.
This is a question from our Instagram Live. Will Israel ever go directly after the Islamic Republic of Iran?
It's a very good question, and I have no intention of answering it directly here. But let's put it this way. The entire issue that we've been speaking about since October 7th, not only in the Gaza Strip, but also in the West Bank, also in Lebanon, also with Shiite militias in Syria, from Iraq that is no longer Iraq, but actually dominated by the Islamic Republic of Iran, in Yemen, in many places in Africa, all of this rolls back to just one entity, and that's the Islamic Republic of Iran. Yes, there are other evils. There's Qatar, which is funding the Muslim Brotherhood. There's Erdogan of Turkey, who's also encouraging the Muslim Brotherhood, being a disciple of that terrorist organization himself. But if Iran shall be quelled, at least its will to create an Islamic radical caliphate worldwide, if that is quelled, many of the issues pertaining to instability in the region and in the West will be quelled as well. Let's leave it at that.
There are two related questions now on our Instagram Live. The first one, is there really a possibility that Lebanon can rid themselves of Hezbollah when they've been embedded in society and government since the 1970s? And the second question, which is related, any sign from the Lebanese National Army? Are they going to get rid of Hezbollah now that Israel has done most of the work?
So really the answer to the two questions is a matter of the will of the Lebanese people. In fact, the origin of what was Lebanon to begin with is to be a safe haven or a sanctuary for the Christians in the region. The Christians welcomed in the Muslims, and slowly but surely they grew in number and they actually became less pleasant, less polite, and more aggressive. And then the Shiites came in, as you yourself had asked, in the 1970s and began to overtake and basically hold the Lebanese captive. Is it manageable? Is it something that can be taken out of society? Yes, of course it can. It's not going to be easy. They're not going to let go very easily. But a lot of the work has already been done. There's still much to do. But the fate of the Lebanese people is, at the end of the day, in the hands of the Lebanese people and the Lebanese army, which will do well to take the reins of what is happening and to rule their own country. But of course, we shall have to wait and see how willing they are to do so.
Shortly before your briefing began, the IDF published a press release saying that it conducted a precise strike in the Dahya area of Beirut. Can you say a few words about what the Dahya area is?
Certainly. In fact, the Hezbollah, a designated terrorist organization, is very different to the Hamas, but actually they have one thing in common. They embed themselves amidst civilian population in Beirut, in a certain neighborhood called the Dahya neighborhood. In other words, it became their headquarters. In fact, inside the homes, under schools, under clinics, under hospitals, and so on. In other words, under civilian population and amidst civilian population, they embedded their terror cells and terrorist activity, thereby endangering the very population which they claim that they defend. And that's exactly what the Hamas is doing in the Gaza Strip. That is the modus vivendi of the operation of a terrorist organization which is radical Islamist, whether it's Hezbollah, Shiite, or Hamas, which is Sunni. But they both use the actual population, the civilian population, as human shields, which is terrible.
There's a report by Dan Williams that Egypt lost $6 billion in revenue in the past 8 months, $6 billion of revenue that it would have gotten from Suez Canal revenue. What is going on that has caused Egypt to lose so much revenue, and what can Egypt and its allies around the world do about it?
So one of the things that have happened because of the instability in the region, plus the Iranian regime's backed Houthi fighters who have been actually targeting a lot of the shipments going through the canal, but also to the area in general, was the fact that Egypt was losing a lot of income. And for Egypt, this is critical because it's a 100 million person republic in a very bad economic status. And of course, tourism is not exactly booming when there are wars and instability, not to mention the loss of revenue because of the lack of passage through that canal. So Egypt is very, very upset by what is going on and very upset by the war in general. Can this be fixed? Of course. Very clear red lines need to be shown to the Houthis in the tactical manner. But again, I come back to what I said again and again before. The head of the snake is the Islamic Republic of Iran. They had armed, trained, encouraged the Houthis in Yemen, created havoc in Yemen itself, and created havoc in the entire region, including the economic stability of Egypt. By the way, the United States just passed Egypt $1.3 billion US and waived what it before actually was adamant to receive, a notification that issues of humanitarian equality and standards were being upheld by the Egyptian regime. Now the US waived that, most probably because of the economic instability that Egypt has found itself in following this particular war and event.
We have viewers watching from all around the world. That includes Lebanon and Lebanese people who are living all around the world. What is your message? This is our final question. What is your message to the people of Lebanon at this time?
First of all, it's the most beautiful question I have received until now in all of my briefings. And it's an amazing opportunity to really, from my heart, say that Israel is not at war with the Lebanese people. It never was, and it never will be. There is no ill feeling amidst any Israelis, and I can vouch for that, against civilians in Lebanon. We don't want to see people hurt, and we don't want a war. In fact, we crave and dream of peace with the Lebanese people. But of course, as a country, we don't want to see Radwan forces, which is the commando force of the Hezbollah, raping, murdering, massacring our people like the Hamas did in the south, and that's what they are planning to do with our civilians in the north, and that's a known fact. Plus, we cannot take that rockets are being thrown at us all the time, unprovoked. No country in the world can take that, and Israel cannot at all be expected to continue not to retaliate. And that's why Israel did what it did against the Hezbollah, not only for the Israeli people, but for the people of the region in general. And inshallah, we'll have more warm words to say to one another in the future. Thank you so much for joining today. And yes, we'll be back again, as always, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time.